Welcome to Following On with our review of the first one-day international between England and South Africa at Headingley. And it was a game to forget in many ways for England, who were absolutely shellacked by 7 wickets. England bowled out for their lowest score at Headingley since the 1970s, when one-day cricket was a very different beast to the game that it is today. 131 all out in less than half of their scheduled overs, 24 and a half overs. Jamie Smith made 54 at the top of the innings, but there was almost nothing after that. An extraordinary collapse. England moving from 102 for 3 to 131 all out. 7 wickets shared between Vian Mulder and Keshav Maharaj, who is the #1 ODI bowler in the world. He took 4 for 22, the veteran left-arm spinner. Vian Mulder took 3 for 33. South Africa were on their way, galloping towards a 10-wicket victory at 121 without loss. Aidan Markram, responding to South African coach Shukri Conrad's plea to show off a bit more, produced a full array of shots on both sides of the wicket, making 86 from 55 balls. He drove Adil Rashid to cover, and then it seems tenuous to use the word consolation, but there was something for the Western Terrace to cheer about as Themba Bavuma, South Africa's captain, and Tristan Stubbs were dismissed in successive deliveries with the scores level. But it was, as I said, a shellacking. Let's get the excuses out the way. Jon Norman is with me. He's at Headingley, and he's in shock at the abject nature of England's performance. So he's lost his voice, and he's asked me to do the intro. John, let's get the excuses out the way. England arrived in dribs and drabs in Leeds. They had the 100 eliminated. They've been playing the 100 for a month. They had the eliminator on Saturday, the final on Sunday. Absolutely no preparation whatsoever. South Africa, on the other hand, have just played Australia in a one-day series and beaten them 2-1. They did only have 6 days to recover from the journey from Australia, but there were lots and lots of reasons. A massive difference between formats. England just looked utterly unprepared, and they played some dreadful shots. South Africa were good, I have to say, but they weren't that good. And I'm still struggling in the minutes after watching that performance, which, by the way, lasted just under 45 overs of the scheduled 100. So I don't know whether the ECB are going to be issuing rebates for those who bought tickets. But you're there. You look a bit shocked.
I don't know if I'm shocked or speechless. I'm looking out onto the Western Terrace now, actually, and we are, 20 minutes after the conclusion of the game, and it's almost deserted. I mean, that's no real surprise, right? But this was a full house. I read your Substack column this week, after a bumper summer of test match cricket and white ball stuff against the Windies and whoever else are here, I can't even remember. And then full houses in a lot of the grounds for the 100. It was certainly well attended. And the appetite for cricket knows no bounds, it seems, in this country. But if there are any more stinkers like that one, I think then maybe we'll be seeing some, buy one, get one free deals for the tickets for ODI cricket. Look, you talk about the excuses, but both teams came into this match with excuses ready. Not that they would have used them, but certainly we like to construct narrative in and around one team essentially scoring more runs and taking more wickets than the other. The excuse for England is that, as you say, they've only just stopped playing the 100, and before that, they'd only just stopped playing a test series. I mean, how exhausted must Harry Brook be right now? How knackered must Joe Root be right now? What about Ben Duckett? I mean, these guys have played throughout. But South Africa themselves had their ready-made excuse because, of course, they were playing in Australia, where you were, a week ago. Unlike you, they got to lie down on the way to England, which, as we both know, does help a lot. But still, let's put the excuses to one side for a minute, because it's not as though this has been an all-conquering England ODI team, over the last couple of years. What I saw today is exactly what I've seen many times in the last 12 to 18 months. Batters getting starts and then limply folding. pressure being put on the England batting attack, and the England batting attack not really knowing what to do when the ball moves just a fraction. And South Africa did get the ball to move a fraction. And, when the fast men were taking out the attack, they have in Keshav Maharaj, a guy full of confidence, bags of experience. And look, they got a guy that could score 300 in Test cricket and take 3 for 33. This is a very strong South Africa side. England have got 2 days to turn it around. And whether they do or they don't, I'm not really sure that the excuses of playing a 100 final, 2 days ago, are really going to bear fruit. This is an England ODI side, which is not as good as the sum of their parts. And we haven't even mentioned poor old Sonny Baker.
Oh, well, okay, seeing as you have. He went for 34 in his first 2 overs. Aidan Markram tore into him. That was pre-planned. I mean, they were always going to do that. International teams do that to debutants, don't they? They make it as hard and as uncomfortable as possible for them. And it was interesting that Harry Brook kept him on. He ended up bowling 7 overs for 76, and I don't mean to sound facetious, but that actually represents a little bit of a comeback. 7 overs for 76. There are lots and lots of questions. Rob Key and the ECB administration and their their willingness to think out of the box and to take brave decisions does does sometimes backfire. And I know Rob Key, when he took the job, said that there would be bad days, but they're going to be brave and bold. Um, the schedule was announced, a year ago. So, there's no point saying, well, it's just there are too many fixtures that there is not enough time between everybody knew that, I suppose. And England have rotated their squads. I mean, they've used a lot of players. You mentioned Ben Duckett. I've been thinking about him can for a long time. I mean, he looked absolutely emotionally and physically spent after the India Test series. He had a poor 100, and I know he's desperate to play all formats. He wants to play as much cricket for England as possible, but there does come a time, doesn't there, where you just need to say, look, you know how much we love you and back you, and you're our main man, but you need to step aside and take a rest.
Well, 25 grand a game for the 100. So they're not going to take a rest there. They're not going to take a rest playing Test cricket unless, like Jamie Overton, they and others, they're going to come out late in their career and say, it's just not worth it. I mean, my body is breaking down having to do this and I'm not getting paid enough. And fair play for his honesty and balls to come out and just say it as it is. I've got a lot of respect for Jamie Overton for saying that. Didn't sugarcoat anything. He stepped away from red ball cricket before an overseas Ashes, and he was quite honest and frank about his reasoning for it. And after listening to it, it would take a crazy person to suggest he's made the wrong decision. But at the end of the day, is it about rotation? I mean, if Ben Duckett doesn't play this game, if Joe Root doesn't play this game, Harry Brook has to play this game. Then what? What then? England lose even heavier, don't they? They're going to have a break. Ben Duckett is going to have a break. There's going to be a good whack of time between the end of this white ball series and the start of the Ashes. I know that talkSPORT cover the tour to New Zealand, but I don't know. I agree. It's very difficult. The other thing is for the fans. I mean, we've just spent the last 3 years watching England perform quite poorly in ODI cricket and white ball cricket. And the reason given for that, or one of the reasons, apart from the retirements of some absolute golden age greats of the game in this country, is that Jos Buttler never had a decent team to call upon. England touring the Caribbean and making Liam Livingstone captain shortly after they dropped him. So kind of caught between giving Harry Brook all of the personnel that he needs at the start of his captaincy and essentially, giving the fans what they pay for. And of course, juggling that with, the very real demands that this game puts on the bodies and the minds, because Jacob Ethel isn't physically tired, but he looks mentally a bit not quite there. And that's a continuing battle. I want to just go back to the Sonny Baker situation again. I don't want to pick his performance apart, but it is a risk. I mean, you don't want to be coming out to bowl defending 132, do you, on debut against a team that are gnarly, battle hardened, and you'd have to say starting to resemble a crack, hot white ball side. But his parents are here today. How quickly, and I was thinking of his family, because how quickly must their feelings have changed from pride, excitement, to fear and to worry. And it's a professional game. You can't shield people necessarily, but you can prevent situations like today happening. Easy to say after the event, really easy to say. But watching Sonny Baker, he's got the speed. Does he have the game? Does he have the game? It's a real risk to put someone out there. It's not like football, and you could just put them on for 5 minutes when you're 3-0 up. That's a big ask, and I'm not sure that the scoreboard will tell you it just didn't happen today. And I hope he's okay. I really do hope he's okay with that, because that was brutal out there. And you've got to feel for him, and you've got to feel for all those that have supported him up until this point. And also, you've got to hope that he doesn't just become another one of those players that were burnt and scarred by an experience that came way too soon.
It was ferocious. Sean Pollock was asked by Michael Atherton on commentary what he would say to him, and Sean, as you know, is a brilliant prevaricator and doesn't like to say things controversial, and certainly doesn't like to upset anybody. And I thought this will be interesting. And he said, "Well, he's got a fantastic attitude. He's got great enthusiasm, and that's to be admired. And I'm sure he'll come right, but maybe he needs a few more skills." Which for Sean Pollock was, as controversial and as bold as.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't seem to have he did bowl a couple of slower balls, but really, it was a brutal introduction. And as you say, John, I just want to ask you before we get too maudlin about this. It's just an ODI. However, England's form has been poor for a couple of years in this format. But from a South African perspective, they've got Shukri Conrad, who's effusive and ebullient and likes to convey great confidence and expresses confidence and says to the team, says to the bowlers, you set your own fields, express yourself, and most importantly, enjoy it. Just enjoy it. It's a remarkable kind of tour itinerary going to Australia and then playing in England back to back, 6 games in each countries. But he is really, really big on enjoy it. Enjoy it. It's not going to be, it's important and we want to win, but it's not a matter of life and death. And there has been a lightness about the South African team over the last year or so, which has been absent for a long time, and that's filtered down from a really poor administration. And I just sense that England cricket needs a hug. It needs someone to put its who is the person to put their arms around the shoulders of England cricket and tell the players, if you're feeling like it's a chore, then that's counterproductive. You need to play again with that smile on your face, and I just think that's hard. I mean, to playing so much so regularly.
Well, I think they've got the ideal person for that, don't they, now? That is Brendan McCullum's mantra, isn't it? You're not going to be here for long. Enjoy it while you can, whether you win or lose, you know, as long as you trust the process and all that, and you go out there and, you're always going to be walking back into a dressing room that backs you, no matter what daft shot you've just played or how poorly you've bowled, you're still our man. So I think they've got that. And McCullum, of course, going back to our original point about why these guys don't get a break and chopping and changing, I imagine when he had his discussions with Rob Key about taking this job, one of the things he would have said was, I want to have my main men. I want to have my main men. And Ben Duckett is definitely one of his main men, as is Harry Brook, Joe Root and the gang. But coming up here on the train today to Leeds, I was reminded that whilst the last time I was at Headingley, we were here together, weren't we, calling a terrific test match against India. But the first time I came up here this summer was the unveiling, I suppose, for want of a better word, of Harry Brook as the captain, the new white ball captain. And there was a little bit of conjecture. There was actually a whisper that maybe Ben Stokes was going to come back and he was going to take up the captaincy of the 50-over side, and Harry Brook was just going to concentrate on the T20s. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. Harry Brook was given the gig. Now, having spoken to Harry, who comes across and tells it like it is, he is from these parts. I did walk away from that presser that day, and we were granted a good 5 or 6 minutes with Harry. And I've just heard him speak to Natalie Germanos, on Sky. And the same kind of thought came back to my mind as it did a few months ago. And it's kind of linked to exactly the same point I was making about Sonny Baker playing today. Is he ready? Is Harry Brook really ready, the right person to be England captain? And hearing him reply to Natalie, who asked, impossible job, essentially, where did it all go wrong, Harry? And then the follow-up question, how are you going to make it better, Harry? He answered the questions in exactly the same way that he did a few months back. And why would he change? And that's essentially as I pithily replied earlier, we just need to score more runs and take more wickets. That's it. That is it. So I think that kind of approach to this white ball side from McCullum and Brook will be kind of Shukri Conrad-esque in some regards. But why I do find myself, as I did back then, slightly uneasy, it's you do need more than vibes and good times to win games of professional sport. You need tactics. You need to know when to put pressure on. You need to know when to pull back. You know when to use the mind games. You need to know what fielding positions and what bowlers and all that kind of stuff. You need all that. Forget all the data. You just need the savvy and the captaincy nous. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure that Brook is quite there yet. And how could he be so early on in his tenure as England's white ball skipper? But that in itself, for me, and how England come back from this and all the other struggles that they're going to encounter in white ball cricket over the next year is going to be fascinating to see how that plays out.
It will, and you know what? They will come back. They're too good a team. Just think that that you need a couple of days to reset. And Harry was involved in the 100, as I said. I don't want to make excuses for England. It was abject, and but it's a great cycle sport, and particularly cricket. And I think there will be a reset, John. You need to jump on the train to get back to London, and then you're back on the horse immediately on Thursday. So I think that there will have to be. You're right. There will have to be a bit more street smarts and a bit more savvy. And I think they've been hit hard by a South African team. Dare I say they may have underestimated, or is that harsh?
No, I think. I was going to ask you actually, and we could maybe pick this up on Thursday. uh, how complete a side is this South African white ball team? You know, what are you, when I look down, obviously there's no Rabada. He's going to come in. You know, what are you missing?
Marco Jansen.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, so you got Jansen and Rabada to come in. What are you lacking? That's what I mean. What is this team lacking? Because it's got the spinning, it's got the spin, it's got the explosiveness, it's got the experience, it's got the pace. Um, I can't see a weakness really.
Yeah, and David Miller, who Temba Bavuma went out of his way to say was still very much in the planning. I do think that this South African team may be one of the strongest in the last 20 years, squad-wise. As you say, like Rabada, Jansen, and David Miller. Does David Miller even get in? Devot Brevis and Tristan Stubbs. There is a strength in depth there that hasn't existed for a while. John, I need to let you go, but a final thought, which again you can pick up on Thursday if you like, but just give us a teaser now, because I heard Owen Morgan on commentary, and he sounded like a man in great pain. I shouldn't, I didn't mean to snigger there, because I just kept thinking, you need to get involved, Owen. You somehow, or the ECB, Rob Keane needs to get Owen Morgan involved. And I know that he's taken some garden leave, hasn't he? After he retired, he's steered clear of the team. There was some speculation about him coming back as coach, and he's taken his time. He's put distance between him and his era and this one. But I do wonder. I don't know in what role, but I do wonder whether England might benefit from his experience and being involved again. What do you think?
Well, he and McCullum are great friends, aren't they? I think the time for Morgan may be a couple of years off, but it would be difficult for him to come into the side in whatever capacity and then continue with the media side of things as well. So who knows? I mean, Owen Morgan was as resolute and a captain as England have ever had. He seemed to have a plan for every single moment, even when the house was burning down. And I mean, look back at Wellington. That's the game that was mentioned on comms today, wasn't it? That 2015 debacle. The problem for England now, as opposed to then, was that back then they had Ben Stokes to come in, Jason Roy to come in, and a host of other, world beaters. Not sure that England find themselves in a similar position now.
Righto. England thrashed in the first game. We go again on Thursday. It's game two from Lords. We'll be back with another following on after that.